Well, we've made it to the end of our fall 2019 gathering, and we are so sad that it's over, to be honest, but also just so happy and excited and grateful that all of you spent all or part of today with us here, or to the many of you who are actually watching the recording of these sessions. Thank you for coming back with us as well. By the most recent count, we have close to 4,000 views today, hovering around 20 countries that have tuned in to view sessions across today. So hello to all of you. Oh, I should check my notes over here to make sure I caught everyone. Hello to Oman, India, Chile, Cambodia, Qatar, the UK, Australia, Brazil. It goes on and on from there. Just hi to all of you. Thank you for joining us during this day. While we're in the spirit of saying thank yous, and before we move to our closing keynote guest, first, just thank you to all of the presenters. I will say, if you didn't notice this today, and if you're watching in the future, you definitely didn't notice this at all. But if you noticed this today while you were watching live, that a session started late, or a session didn't come up at all, or a session came later than you thought, we every year have to figure out what technology is available to us right now and how it's working. And so a few weeks ago, part of our tech team leaders, worked together to finalize exactly how the day would go, trained a bunch of volunteers that were on our tech team as hosts. And then today, half the stuff that we prepared for was no longer working, which is sometimes the way with especially things like Google and YouTube sometimes don't always stay the same from day to day to day. So very quickly, we realized things weren't going the way that they wanted. But I do have to say, presenters were so incredibly flexible and supportive and helpful. And a special extra shout out, and please cheer as loud as you can. We want to hear you from far away, wherever you are. A special incredible shout out to today's tech team. Our host, Carolyn, or our tech co-host leaders, Carolyn and Jessica and Amy Kaiser, who I asked her to put her face up there, and she said, I don't have a nice picture of myself yet. So that's fine, Amy, but this is for you as well. The three of them really worked to problem solve quickly. And then our tech hosts, Jennifer, Julia, Justin, and Jamie, were so incredibly flexible and thoughtful in trying to be there as best as they could and hitting record on sessions when sessions weren't streaming the way that they needed to. So much was happening behind the scenes. We all worked together on Voxer all day long that we hope a lot of it you didn't even see. And it's all thankful to these people. So if you, on our page, click over to About, then you'll see a link to Tech Team. And you can see their bios as well as their Twitter handles. Please give them a shout out today. This day would not happen without our incredible, amazing all-star tech team. This is also a plug to say before we move on too far, if you would like to be a part of the tech team, maybe that doesn't sound interesting to you, but I know some of you listening are like, yes, that's a thing I'd really like to do. Or yes, I'd like to learn those skills. Or yes, I'd like to work together with an incredible group of people. Every year, we're always looking for, actually twice a year, we're always looking for not just proposals for sessions, but also people to join the tech team. So if that might be you, you'll get information about that in just a few seconds here, but just have that in mind. Maybe I can be a part of the tech team too. I love learning together and watching all of the sessions and tweeting. But I have to say, one of my favorite parts of the day, and I really, truly mean this, is being on Voxer with this incredible group of people. And the group of people is always somewhat changing across time. We feel like we're pretty good at helping you out if you're new to it. But truly, it's one of the highlights of the day, just working together with all these incredible educators who volunteer their time to make this day great for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you. One last call to please, 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 please make sure that you're considering donating to our adopted charities for today. In just a little bit, I'll be introducing Min, and he'll mention a little of his charity as well. But the charity that he's adopted for us for today is an open book, a Children's Literacy Foundation. You can find the link to that as well as the charity that Christina adopted for us on our website, or you can go directly to gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com/charity. And because this is a day you did not have to pay for, because you can watch it as many times as you'd like before our next gathering in April, we'd love for you to consider how much would you have spent on coffee or lunch or airfare or registration or a hotel or whatever amount you'd like to give, and then pay that joy forward. please consider giving to one of these two adopted charities, or really to anything you'd like at all. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet today, we'd love for you to do that now and then tweet about it. Use hashtag #TheEdCollab and let us know that you've donated. You also could donate to really any charity that you'd like. No amount is too small. When you go to that link, we have additional links. We have a description from both Christina and Min to tell you why they adopted those charities. But then there's links that go directly to those charities' website. Money never comes through us. You can just give that straight to them. So this is the part of our day just before we're just a few minutes away from having Min join us. This is the part of our day that I love because we get to announce our next gathering as well as our keynote. So drum roll, I'm gonna have Twitter open because I just like to see when everyone goes, yay, when you find out who it is. So our next gathering, we hold this twice a year, every September and every April. It's always on a Saturday in one of those 2 months. Our next gathering will take place on Saturday, April 18th. And we are so excited and honored to have, drum roll, see, I'm watching you, Twitter, drum roll. There's Lizeth, hi Lizeth, who's tweeting along. Our keynote on Saturday, September 18th in the year 2020 is the Disrupt Text group. Yay! So it is Trisha, Lorena, Kim, and Julia will be joining us for the morning keynote where they will kick off our day in incredible fashion, as they always do in all of their work. I feel so lucky to know these incredible women and to have worked with them in a variety of ways. Although Dr. Kim Parker and I worked together, it was through NCTE on a task force together, and we enjoyed each other so much, but still have not yet met in person. So maybe digital will be close enough, Kim, but come on. Come on. But for all of them, they're incredible educators that do amazing work. You already know them. But if you don't, you can find them at the hashtag DisruptText, or to Google them, and you'll find their organization's website, DisruptText, where they do amazing anti-racist work, anti-bias work inside of the curriculum, helping us to think about the ways that we can disrupt the text that we're choosing. And Lorena is on Twitter, and I'm forgetting, we'll find it. We'll add it to the slide and we'll tweet it out as well too. So you can all tweet to her too. But please join us in saying, yay, Disrupt Text. And we can't wait to see them. And they'll be here on April 18th. But you know what? The gathering is not just a keynote session. A gathering is proposals led by incredible educators from literally all around the world, talking and sharing and speaking about their practice. Because no one can tell the story of educators better than educators. In fact, we need to tell our own stories and share our own work because there are a lot of other people, sometimes in politics, sometimes in communities, sometimes trying to vote for school board, lots of places who are trying to tell that story for us. Teachers in Chicago, I know, just their union just recognized and voted for a strike. Educators need to be able to tell and share our own work. So this day on April 18th, just like today's day, is not just a keynote, it also needs you. So right now, proposals are open where you could join with some colleagues or even students. We love sessions with students, and you can present during this incredible day too. You'll find all the information at the proposal link, which is on the bar right up there. If you're on our webpage, just literally click the proposals open button. You'll go straight to our site where you can fill out the proposal form. We're going to leave them open all the way through December. So you'll have lots of time to get over the beginning of year, crazy that happens, and think together, maybe those of you in the US over your Thanksgiving break, or other times, maybe those of you attending one of the upcoming literacy conferences, you might talk together and meet together and think about a proposal you could submit. We would love to have you present with us on April 18th. If you're afraid of talking on camera, don't be. All of those incredible people that we thanked earlier and anyone else who joins our tech team before then are trained to help you feel OK on camera and present well, just like you saw all of those sessions today. So proposals are open. If you'd like to join the tech team, follow that same link, proposals open, that's above me somewhere up there. And that will also take you to, you'll see another link where you can apply to be a member of the tech team. The Educator Collaborative hosts this totally free easy access. We want to make it as easy as possible to learn from everyone who presents during each of our gatherings, but that's just one of the many things that we do. So we'd love to have you visit our main site, theeducatorcollaborative.com, and you can see ways that you can invite our family to come and work with you in your school, to present at your conferences. There's a lot of us that you'll see around this year presenting in lots of places. And also some of our additional low-cost or free online learning opportunities and ways that you can collaborate with other classrooms too. There's also some resources and lesson planning templates and papers and lots of stuff you can grab as well. And our blog, and okay, I'll stop. But so you can learn more about us there. If you'd like to not just read about it, but hear about it in the pre-session, which is also linked up there somewhere, in the pre-session, I talked through this year's study series, which is our 12-session series of web sessions that you can join, led by incredible educators and members of our organization that you can register once and watch all year. You can learn about that as well as other opportunities directly from me. OK, so I guess one last big thank you to everyone who presented today, to our incredible tech team, and to all of you who tuned in from across miles. Thanks for being a part of our day. Before you go, we hope that you will use hashtag #TheEdCollabGathering to share some of today's highlights. We started out this morning with an incredible opening keynote by Christina Sutenvart. And now we are so lucky to have with us this afternoon, Minh Lê, who will be talking about his work. And the title of his closing keynote is Searching for Home in a World of Books. You likely know his work. It's probably around you. Here's, it looks like I just placed this there. I really did place it there so I could grab it easily. But before this, it's been here. It's been within arm's reach all the time. Here is one of Minh's books with Dan Sentat drawn together, which I have carried this with me across the country and even to some other countries too, and shared this with classroom after classroom after classroom and groups of teachers everywhere. More recently, Julia Torres and I were in California together and we shared it there. There's a school in the Bronx that we ended the year with some teachers reading this together. And there's just so much about all of Minh's work. But I'll say to this one in particular, because I'm holding it right now, it just has a way the way it's often described is in sparse language, it tells such a tremendous story. For my own experience, when I think about my children, they're both white and Latinx. And so they're second generation on the kind of Latinx side of them. And everything captured in this book about trying to traverse across language and experience, this brought so much of that to me and through the ways we think about our family here. So thank you, Minh, and thank you, Dan, for that incredible book. Here on the screen, you can see a lot of other Minh's books, and many more are to come. So please, again, if you're enjoying today, consider donating to the charity that he's had us adopt for today. And without further ado, I'd like to invite our very special guest, Minh, to lead us through Searching for Home in a World of Books. Hi, Minh. We're so happy to have you here today.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you. We're really honored to have you spend some time this afternoon here.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm glad to see that you also deploy the double wave. That's something that we do a lot in my family. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me. I'm such a huge fan of the Ed Collab and everything that you do. That when you asked me to join you is a huge honor. So thank you to you, Christopher, and to Amy and Jessica and the whole Ed Collab Gathering crew for inviting me to join you all on this amazing day. And just so you know, I was on mute during the introduction, but when you revealed the Disrupt Tech people were going to be the opening keynote for the thing, I was cheering. I'm a huge fan of their work. And before I get started, just to let you know, I actually had a dream a couple weeks ago where I woke up and I was certain that the people behind Disrupt's work had a podcast called Canon Fodder, where they dissect what's considered in the literary canon and decided what should stay. So if you're listening out there, I have not forgotten that. It's not a joke, and I'm hoping to see that on Apple Podcasts or whatever soon. I'll subscribe immediately. Before I get started, thank you so much for mentioning an Open Book Foundation. I was so excited when you asked us to choose a charity for the day. And this one is one that's close to my heart. I serve on the board for it, and it's an organization that connects authors and creators to under-resourced schools. So like for me as an author, there's nothing I love more than connecting with students and seeing books come to life in the classroom. However, not all schools have the resources to bring in authors or illustrators, and that's where an Open Book Foundation comes in. They work tirelessly to organize free visits to schools and provide free books for every student. And basically so that all children have the opportunity to make those connections with creators and help cultivate a love of reading. So I know a lot of author friends of mine who have done visits. I've done visits to schools, and it's always a very powerful thing. For those of you who believe in the power of books, and I'm assuming that if you're here, that is true, then I encourage you to look them up. So to be honest, when I saw a list of people participating, I have to admit that I was a little bit intimidated. Like seeing some of my favorite authors and educators on the agenda was awe-inspiring. And for someone who wrote a book about being speechless, the idea of being invited to deliver a keynote was unexpected, to say the least. But like I said, I'm very honored. And given all the amazing content that you've seen today, all the different workshops and the presentations, selfishly, I'm looking at this as kind of like a family dinner. You've had the appetizers, you have the entrees. You're totally full with all the knowledge that all these people have been presenting you with, and then I get to swoop in at the end, kind of like the after dinner mint, and just kind of like just to send you on your way. The theme I chose for my closing keynote is searching for a home in the world of books. And you're actually catching me at an interesting time, because my wife and I, the two boys, are about to move cross country from the DC, Maryland area to San Diego. So we are very much in the process of reinventing our home. It's a good thing you can't see what's behind me right now, because it's a total disaster. I tell people a lot of times that our home is, the best way I can describe our home is if you took a bookstore and a library and they got into a street fight. That's kind of what is behind this laptop. And I'm not turning around so you won't be able to see it. But I'll begin by saying with a very simple statement, and that is that I am proud to say that I come from a family of immigrants and refugees. So this is a pride I've always had, but I didn't always think that it was something I needed to publicly affirm. But given the tragedy currently unfolding at our border and elsewhere throughout the world, it's an affirmation that feels sadly necessary. So I was born here in the US, but my family fled their war-torn homes in Vietnam. Some having no choice but to make that dangerous journey by boat. And whether they were taking to the air or taking to the waves, they were very much risking everything that they had, hoping to find a safe harbor and a new home for our family. So a byproduct of this displacement is that I very much grew up feeling caught between worlds. I never felt fully and authentically Vietnamese. There's a lot of kind of searching for identity there. But I also didn't feel completely quote unquote American, as I understood it as a child. And as a writer now, when I've talked to a lot of author friends, and we talk about what it means to write for the diaspora, how do you capture experiences? It's thinking about the word diaspora and how it's, by definition, is to be displaced. The idea of a community that is defined as much by the space between us as we are by the ties that bind us is, to me, a very profound thing, especially when you think about the world of books and trying to make those connections with people that you have or have never met. As a writer, I'm starting now to appreciate that distance that is the defining aspect of the diaspora is actually a testament to the strength of those bonds. So you can feel that connection to people that you've never met, that have wildly different experiences, but there's something there that does tie us together, and that's something that is maybe ineffable to some degree, but is something that as a writer you're trying your best to capture and define. But as a child, I did often, as I said, feel adrift between identities. But that was until I found a place that did feel like home, and that is the world of books. So there's this James Baldwin quote, and just if you put the next slide up, that I think many of you know, and it's that you think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. And that's very much true for me, who often felt alone before like finding myself and finding comfort in the pages of books like A Chair for My Mother or Escaping for Adventures with the Heroes of Greek Mythology, and then eventually finding reflections of myself in books like American Born Chinese, and more recently, A Different Pond. But there's that James Baldwin quote, but then there's the unspoken corollary to that you think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you write. That's something that I didn't realize until I became an author and I put out a book like Drawn Together. So thank you so much for the kind words about the book, Christopher, and everyone who has shared it over the years. It's been very, very special to me. It's not hyperbole when I say that a book is not complete until it's being read. So to see educators like you all sharing a book with your students, that to me is when a book finally comes to life. And I really do thank everyone who has shared it. But it's a book that felt very personal to me because it was written from a place of love and a place of regret. It's about a boy and a grandfather who struggle to connect because of a language divide. And I realized that in writing it, it was both a testament to the love that we did feel, even if we weren't able to put it into words. But it was also my somewhat selfish attempt to find absolution for that distance that did ultimately define our relationship. I mean, those early scenes in the book, if you're familiar with it, where the boy and the grandfather sit together on a couch and they're so separated. They're right there next to each other, but they couldn't be further apart. Those were scenes taken straight out of my childhood. And it felt to me like this personal failure. There's someone that I love unconditionally, so much, but we just sat there and didn't know how to talk to each other. And so for me, that felt like this huge weight that I carried with me. And putting it on the page felt like a very raw experience. But what came out of that is that having shared the book now with people, people have returned the favor in that they've reached out to me, whether in person or on Twitter or elsewhere, and sharing their own stories about their relationships with their grandparents or other family members, and talking about the distances that they felt, whether that's generational, linguistic, or cultural. And in doing so, I found suddenly that I wasn't alone, that there's this community that I could share this with, and like the quote says, you think that pain is unprecedented, but then when you share yourself, whether through reading or through writing, you realize that you aren't alone. That's a very comforting feeling and a testament to the power of books. Something that a lot of people have asked me over the year since the book came out is, so what did your grandfather think about the book? He must be so proud. And the sad truth of it is that he never knew about the book. He knew that I was working on a book at the time, but I never found the way or the courage to tell him what the book was about. It felt too personal. Obviously, it's a book about inability to communicate. So that was very real, and that I did not know how to communicate this personal story to him. And my hope was to have the finished product and be able to hand it to him, and in that way bridge that divide. Unfortunately, he became sick while the book was still in progress, and I got a call from my parents that he was sent to the hospital and he was in a coma. So I just that day had received a PDF file with all of a first round of Dan's complete sketches. So I printed it out and I cut and pasted, and I made this makeshift book and rushed up to Connecticut where my grandfather was to see him, and hopefully, if the opportunity presents itself, to be able to share this with him before it was too late. Unfortunately, I got there and he sadly never emerged from his coma. I was able to spend a number of days by his side, by his bedside, and during that time, I was able to read the book to him. And the hope is that he was able to, despite being in a coma, that he was present enough that I was able to share that and convey that with him. That's the hope. But the sad truth is that I put my relationship on hold because I kind of succumbed to that lack of communication, to that inability to communicate. And what's been powerful for me is when people have shared their experiences with the book, and they've actually said, "Oh, this book really made me think about my grandparents," and I called them, and I realized that there wasn't time to waste, and I wanted to connect. I can't think of a better tribute to my grandparents than to have a book about this relationship and its shortcomings, but to have that help other people connect with the people that are important in their lives, and that they're able to realize that there's no time like the present to tell people that you love them, and that I know that my grandparents love me and I love them. I know that they know that I love them, but that's something that I'll always think about. But being able to leverage that into a story that can be used as a tool for other people to connect has been very powerful. So I thank you all for that. So when I think about, I've talked a lot about like the power of storytelling. Because when I felt lost, I did find myself in the world of books, and it's where I choose to make my home as an author, as a reader, and where a lot of you have chosen to make your home by investing in the power of books. But I have to admit that lately my faith in the power of books has been shaken, and I know that a lot of you feel similarly when you're faced with the onslaught of current events and just like these horrific news feeds. It's when the problems of the world are so enormous, it feels somewhat indulgent or naive to proclaim the power of the written word, right? And it begs the question, like, how do you celebrate the power of books for children in a world that can be so cruel to children? And do books actually make a difference when families seeking refuge are separated and being held in cages? That's something that I think a lot of us struggle with, and I think that cognitive dissonance is very real. And those questions cannot and should not be ignored. But I've also come to realize that in this moment, books and stories are critical, and still have a vital role to play. When I look at everything that's going on in the world, it's so hard to wrap your mind around, hey, what can you do? What's the root of all this? I do think that so many of the horrific events that flood our news feeds can be traced back in part to one very simple thing, and that is an inability to see others as fully human. Sorry, I lost my spot here. As I was saying, it can be traced back to one simple thing, and that's the inability to see ourselves as others as fully human. And that's the power of books, because books do, by sharing our stories, do reveal our humanity to each other. They do reaffirm our humanity. As a community, I know that we talked a lot about the importance of diversity in literature, because when the characters on the shelf that look like us are all sidekicks or stereotypes, that means that the fullness of our humanity is not part of the public imagination. And I think this denial or failure to truly see one another has real life implications that manifest themselves in the tragedies that are written to our history books and sadly our current events. Because whether it's due to a lack of empathy or more sinisterly a willful ignorance, that dehumanization, that inability to see others as fully human, is what makes it that much easier for inhumane policies. And I think that's something that books cannot solve, but that is an area that books can play a role. Especially when dehumanizing rhetoric is being trumpeted from the highest offices in the land, we need stories more than ever to counteract that. And these are stories that show our heartache, but also our joy, stories that show us at our deepest moments, as well as our most frivolous. It's, we need these stories that can reaffirm our humanity and kind of reverse that tide, or at least counteract it. So that's one of the most powerful things about books and stories is their ability to reveal the depths of our humanity, to ourselves and to each other. I think a lot about the work that We Need Diverse Books has done. I remember they put out a call early on. They're like, tell us one reason why you need diverse books. And that was like a tweet length statement. And I was thinking about it, and the statement that came to mind was, we need diverse books so that tomorrow's classics reflect today's society. Right? When you think about the books that were available to us as children in the curriculum and all that, it's what was called quote unquote the classics were based on what was available. But that creates this insidious line of thinking that only a certain archetype or a certain type of people can write classic books, that can write great literature. And I think the more we're able to put out books from a broad range of creators, the better we'll be able to pick out great books from all backgrounds, and then the next generation of classics is going to be that much richer. I think a lot about, when I think about the work that We Need Diverse Books does, there's a story, possibly apocryphal, but I think it's true, about my grandmother who lives in Vietnam right now. She, a couple decades ago, she bought this house. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere. And people were like, why are you buying this house? There's nothing here. And she's like, this is where I'm going to make my home. And I'm going to build a road to this home. And then lo and behold, years later, it's like a road was built, other houses started popping up, and now there's this thriving community there. And when I think about the work that We Need Diverse Books has done, I think about that because we as storytellers from different communities, these stories have always been here. Our home has always been here. What We Need Diverse Books has done the important work of building a road to those stories, creating a marketplace to pressure publishers and the book industry to recognize these stories and to disseminate these stories. But there have been so many writers, whether published or not, who have been doing this work over the years. And I as an author, have benefited so much from that work and from the work of building this road that we can all travel on now. And I think now we continue to thrive, and it can only go, hopefully, only become greater from here. So the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is when mirrors fail. So we talked about before about how we all believe in the power of books. But something that Debbie Reese reminded me of recently on Twitter is that power cuts both ways. So it's important to remember that if we do believe in the power of books, that books can elevate, yes, but they can also suppress. Can we go back a couple of slides? Oh, okay. Well, I might have jumped ahead of myself, so that's my bad, Jessica. So we all owe a debt to Dr. Radine Sims Bishop for creating the template that we all use to think about books these days, with mirrors, windows, and sliding doors. And I hope she's going to be referenced into eternity. That nothing makes me happier. But I have a story, a mirror story that I found that would be useful to share. So it's a little bit hard to believe when I look back at it. So Jessica, if you can turn to, there's a picture of a boy, me as a kid, standing in front of a painting. You switch to that one. Yeah, so this is me. I think it was like, I can't read the fine print, but I think it was like second or third grade. And this is a self-portrait that I did in art class. And it was collected into like this like local art show that was on the local university. And if you look closely at this picture, to me, I see that there's like a twinkle in this kid's eye, in my eye from right then. And I found this picture recently, and I realized that like suddenly like these memories came flooding back. And I was like, I know this kid's secret. And his secret is that that's not him in the self-portrait. So the assignment was in class to do self-portraits. And the art teacher handed out these like little mirrors to everyone. And somehow we were short. We ran out of mirrors. And there's another boy in the classroom who was Cambodian American. And somehow he and I looked at each other and we like devised a scheme, like we know how we're gonna solve this problem. We will just draw each other instead of looking in the mirror. And thinking about like what that means about your self-identity as a kid when you're like, I can just draw the other Asian kid and that's close enough, or that is my self-portrait. And I tie that back very much to the literature that was available in those days, because one of the books that was read a lot in my elementary school growing up was The Five Chinese Brothers, right? And like that idea that that people cannot distinguish between Asian people is apparently something that, and the insidiousness of that imagery is something that burrowed itself into both of our subconscious, to the point where we thought like, oh, I'll just draw you, or you draw me, and we'll call it a day. But when I see this picture, it's painful. And first of all, I know it's him because I remember that yellow shirt that my friend had, and I coveted that shirt for some reason. So I made sure to put that in the self-portrait. But that makes me think about like when mirrors do fail, when the mirrors that you see that are available to you are these like shattered mirrors or these like funhouse mirrors, then that's how you end up seeing yourself. And there's a lot of work that has to be done to disentangle that and to actually see yourself the way through an unfiltered lens, without the use of that type of mirror. I think as a writer, a lot of what I'm trying to do, or what drives me on some level, is like putting stories out there that are true reflections of people, and that aren't going to have that. So they aren't going to distort people's self-image in a way that is harmful. Like this what's this little boy? Though he was happy enough, but that's the thing about that kind of representation, is that you don't realize the damage it's doing to you at the time. So I thought that was worth sharing. If you go up one more slide, I did want to share this graphic that I hope all of you have seen by now. It's a graphic about diversity in children's books, and put out by Sarah Parks Allen and David Hike, and that compiles data from the Cooperative Children's Book Center from the School of Education at the University of Wisconsin. And in this graphic, you can see that there are shattered mirrors and like warped mirrors as well. So it's like, it's important to think about not just the representation, but the kind of representation, and the harm that comes with negative or distorted representation. So I thought I would turn back a little bit to the idea of psychic sense of heroes. And I talked about like what it means when the people who look like you are only psychics and stereotypes. That was very much the way it was for me growing up. But I got a call last year, over a year ago, from DC Comics, and they said, we are starting a new line of middle grade and YA graphic novels, and we'd like to invite you to write a story or pitch us an idea. And my first thought was, I think he has the wrong number, because I write picture books. But thankfully they're like, no, we know your work, and we're curious to see what you come up with. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, on down, and just to see if anything strikes. So for me, it is a dream, because I love comics, and when people talk about comics as the modern mythology, as I mentioned before, as a kid I read a lot of Greek mythology, and one of my favorite characters was Hercules, and like 12 Labors of Hercules. I've like read those stories, and I imagine myself in those stories. I want you to picture in your mind right now what you imagine when you hear Hercules, right? Now I want you to take that picture and transpose the exact opposite, which is a scrawny little Vietnamese American boy from the suburbs of Connecticut, with the musculature of a pool cue. And so you couldn't get any further from who I was to a character like Hercules, but yet I was able to do the imaginative work of inserting myself into the stories, finding reflections of myself in a way that allowed those stories to resonate with me on a personal level. So the opportunity to, and it wasn't until later that I kind of realized like those stories were excluding people with my particular who were like me. I wasn't part of the stories, and I didn't realize that until later on. So now to have the opportunity to write a character as part of like this modern mythology was a dream. I looked at all these characters, and I was like, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. I'm not touching those. That's too iconic for me. But when I got to Green Lantern, I was doing some research, and I was like, oh, so Green Lantern is a character who has a green power ring, and that ring draws its strength from the character's own strength of will. And I was like, I know someone like that. And just because you can go to that picture with the book cover, I was like, I know someone like that. And I had this flash of my grandmother. Scroll up 2 slides. So yeah, right there. So that's my grandmother. And I grew up with her, and she was very much like the literal hero of our family story. She played a huge role in getting our family out of Vietnam during the war. And so to be able to write a story that that honored her heroism was an amazing opportunity. So and luckily DC Comics said yes. So the pitch is there's a 13-year-old boy named Tai Pham. He lives with his parents and his grandmother, who runs a local corner store, kind of like the ones that my grandmother here ran. And unfortunately, one day she passes away. But he ends up with her jade ring, or what he thought was her jade ring, because it turns out that was actually a Green Lantern power ring, and his grandmother was a Green Lantern. She was a superhero his entire life, and he just didn't know it. So now the story follows him as he discovers more about his grandmother's secret superhero past, while also learning how to wield his own powers. And for me, it was powerful as a Vietnamese American because you go into a bookstore when you're a kid, and there are tons of books on Vietnam, but they're all about the war, and they're all about from the perspective of the U.S. So growing up, Vietnam and Vietnamese people were solely there as a function and as a backdrop for American trauma, right? So the idea of flipping that narrative and turning the immigrant and refugee story into something powerful was really important to me. And what I love about superhuman stories is when they draw upon the human. And there are so many heroes among us, a lot of you included, who are doing such important work. And to be able to represent that in a story through something like DC Comics and something like Green Lantern was really, really special. And I think, especially thinking about now, like the story here, the grandmother is a refugee, like my family was. And thinking about how there are so many people out there today who are living that story and are incredible heroes in just navigating the world as it is right now. I wanted to show that wasn't the victim narrative, or like the more insidious narratives that you'll find out there are not true. There was these are stories and lives worth celebrating. And then, yeah, if you go to the next slide, I had the good fortune of going to Vietnam this summer with my family. I hadn't been in 30 years, and I hadn't seen my grandmother in 20 years, but I was able to share this story with her. And I'm assuming that everyone out there, I can't hear you, but I'm assuming there are lots of oohs and ahs, because I mean, look at her, she's wonderful. But to be able to share that story with her was really important to me, and once in a lifetime thing. I wanted to, both like as her grandson, show how much I was indebted to her. And this is my other grandmother, different from the one I showed you in the previous slide. I wanted to show much how I was indebted to her, and as a generation, we're so indebted to our grandparents. And I hope that by sharing this story, with young readers, it'll help them see the elders in their lives with different eyes, and then realize how many heroes there are in our own family. We're actually, I'm doing well. I thought I was going to run out of time, but or I was going to end too soon. I wanted to touch a little bit on the idea next of nostalgia. I know that that's something that, and this year talking about embracing and moving beyond nostalgia, because that's something that I think in the world of children's literature is very powerful, and it's a hard thing to figure out, a hard dynamic to disentangle. There's so many people doing important work, whether it's Debbie Reese or the Conscious Kid or the Disrupt Text people and others who are critically looking at children's books, and the ones that we grew up with. And a lot of what they're uncovering is problematic content. And what's sad is that this is met with such resistance. And I was trying to think about like what is behind this resistance and why are people holding so tightly. And I think when you think about nostalgia, all it is just like these warmth of emotion that's tied to experience, tied to a particular book or something that's happened in the past. And that emotion, that nostalgia has a very strong lingering power that lasts up until the present. The problem is that when you're so beholden to that nostalgia, to that feeling, that you're unable to move forward or look back with a critical eye, then you're doing a disservice to yourself and to the children that you're sharing books with. I think when you talk about like, as a Buddhist, and I'll touch upon this a little bit later, the idea of enlightenment, you have to be able to let go of prior knowledge in order to make any progress. And I think when that prior knowledge is tied to a heartwarming moment of like reading, it's hard to disentangle, but it's important to be able to do that. And there's so many wonderful books out there now by like Dreamers by Judy Morales, or The Adventures of Pico, or by Dan Santat, or thinking about one I read the other day with my son, My Poppy as a Motorcycle by Isabel Quintero and Zeke Peña, and all the books by Christina Simfernbach, who are lovely, amazing opening keynote. There's so many wonderful books being put out there that if we are only willing to share the books from our childhood, and those books are problematic, if we turn a blind eye to the problems in that content, then we're just regenerating and creating that nostalgia for another generation. And there's a particular kind of like violence to that if we're willfully turning our eyes from what those problems are. I think like since we're talking about like this talk about the search for home in a world of books, you can go and visit your home that you grew up in. It's lovely as like there's so many wonderful memories there. If the foundation is crumbling, if the roof is leaking, you don't necessarily want to live there anymore. You might be able to freshen things up by patching things up or opening the windows, letting some fresh air in. But there may be some books that are homes that aren't salvageable. I think we have to be able to reckon with our childhood memories, with our nostalgia, and be able to figure out how do we keep those feelings while still reckoning with the content behind it, and being able to separate and distinguish between those two. I thought I would finish up with start to wrap up by sharing a poem. I don't write poetry, unfortunately, or fortunately, but I found this poem recently. A friend of mine sent me this poem from.
We're losing your audio for just a minute. Maybe unplug. Can you turn off the earpods and we'll just go with the computer mic?
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. So this picture, this little kid who is cloaked in, I believe, 5 different kinds of denim, and is blissfully unaware that he's diving or headfirst into the awkward. But my friend sent me this poem that I wrote back in the day, So I'll just read it to you now real quick. It says, a book is the key to your imagination that will open the way to a magical location. It can be somewhere mysterious or somewhere serious. It can be somewhere exciting or somewhere inviting. You can meet someone nice or someone as cold as ice. You might meet them once. You may meet them twice. So here I go to a land far away on a tropical vacation, and I don't have to pay. So I share that with you because to show you there's a reason why I don't write poems. but as a reader, it's clear from poems like this and just like my way of thinking that I used to think of books as a retreat from the world, as an escape from the world. But now as a writer, I'm looking to books as more as my way back into the world. I think that's a lot of like where you as educators come in as readers and people who are working with children, because as every author or creator knows, books by themselves are not enough, right? Left alone on the shelf, a book is a static, powerless thing. And it's not until it's read and shared that a book's potential can be unleashed. So when I think about like the Ed Collab community and everyone out there, what I feel is like being in the presence of kindred spirits who have also found a home in books, but are not retreating from the world. That you're using your love of books as a tool for engaging with the world, and taking that love back to your communities, your students, your libraries, your parents, your families, and using that as a way of making change. I was recently, so I grew up Buddhist, and I'm diving back into the Buddhist philosophy for a project that I'm working on. But I came across this concept that made me think about all of you. So if you'll indulge me, I'm gonna to talk about this concept in Buddhism called the triple gem, and that's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Buddha, the root of the word Buddhism is, it's not the Buddha as you envision him as a person. It's the root of the word Buddhism is to wake up, or to know, or to understand, right? So when I think about that, it's like the commitment to knowledge, the commitment to furthering yourself to enlightenment. It's exactly what you all as educators have committed yourselves to. So the second piece of that triple gem is the Dharma, which is the way to understanding. So that's talking about the path or the process. And when I think about you all spending your weekends on professional development opportunities like this, that's exactly what you're doing. You're focusing on your practice, trying to figure out and creating the way to better understanding. And the final part of this triple gem is the Sangha, which is community. And for you all, and as an online community or the teachers that you work with, to be committed to each other and committed to gathering like this, learning from each other, thriving, challenging each other. That's the path forward, is not one that we can travel alone. I think if we are going to make it, we're going to have to lean on each other. And that's what I've seen as being part of this day, because the students that you teach, the communities you touch, the people you inspire, all of that comes from this commitment to knowledge, this dedication to finding the path, figuring out your practice, and then coming together to move forward. So I thought I would share that with you all quickly. And so I just wanted to, as we wrap up, take this opportunity, hold on one second, to thank you all for what I say, making the world a place we can be proud to call home. Because when I talk about the power of books, and I've said that my faith in the power of books feels shaken, but I do always come back to their inherent power, and especially in the hands of educators like yourselves. Because even in times like this, as challenging as they are, and as discouraging as the days can seem, I do think we do need stories, we do need books. They won't fix everything, but they can be homes and safe havens for however momentarily for children. They can provide an escape, they can inspire, and they can show the world its true reflection to remind us all of our shared humanity. So thank you so much for letting me join you all today. And thank you for everything you do for your students and your families. You do all, and I'm not just spouting this, you do all give me hope that together we can play a part in shaping this collective story of ours and make this world a place that we can all be proud to call home. So thank you so much. And I hope you had a wonderful day.
Thank you, Min. So basically Twitter was like, whoa, no. It's full of tears and joy and just being pushed by the many things that you helped us consider. We were fighting to try to make sure we had the exact right words that you said for some of the quotes that you were sharing. And I will say that was my own personal wish that you would have more photos of your grandma up. So when grandma showed up, that I was applauding here at home. I think you're one of your biggest, well, not one of your biggest, one of your many messages, the path forward is one we cannot travel alone. So we're so lucky to have you, Min, here with us, traveling the path with us. It's the second time that you've been involved with us here in our community directly. But we just love all connecting with you every place we go, whether it's in person or through your books. So thank you again so much for spending this time with us. And so if the path forward is one that we can't travel alone, then also a great big thank you to all of you who have been traveling this path along with us today here at the Educator Collaboratives Gathering. Just a reminder, if you were inspired today, so many of us were literally wiping away tears during this last session. I texted Julia Torres and was, because she and Min sent a picture of them together somewhere and I wasn't there, and that made me sad, but I texted her and was like, this is so amazing. I feel both like I want to cry and I want to fight. And she was like, yeah, Min's good at that. So if you were inspired by Min's work, please go to minleybooks.com. You can also find him at Bottom Shelf Books. If you're inspired by this closing session and all of the sessions today, all the way back to Christina's incredible opening from us with us this morning, please remember to pay the joy forward. Those feelings you're feeling right now, there's many places you can put them. One that we hope you'll place them in is giving to these incredible charities that we've adopted for today. This last session was free. You could tune in from anywhere to listen to Min's incredible words and his call to action for all of us, and his bravery and the way that he talked about his family and himself and his experience. You didn't have to pay anything for that. So please take what you may have spent on registration or on coffee or anywhere else and pay that forward to these incredible charities. We thank you all for that. And if you do, please consider tweeting about it. And then lastly, I'll repeat it again, the path forward is one we cannot travel alone. Thank you for those words. So we hope to see you in many places here at the Ed Collab, but in particular, we do hope that you'll consider either joining the tech team and submitting an application for that, or proposing a session for our April 18th gathering. That's Saturday, April 18th, where the Disrupt Text team will be our opening keynote, and it's going to be amazing. And you know you'd want to be a part of that day. So please connect with colleagues, friends, maybe even students, and submit a proposal before they close on December 6th. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to the tech team. Thank you to presenters. Thank you, Christina, for starting us off. I know that you're watching because you were watching Min's session. So thank you for starting us off in such a beautiful, powerful way. And Min, you've just brought this day to an incredible, emotional and important end. Truly, I feel grateful to have this great community that we can all be in a path traveling forward together, not alone. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for your gifts. And as always, thanks for everything you do for your students, your colleagues, and this amazing profession. Have a great rest of your year. We'll see you in April, if not sooner.